define the value for the shareholders, we can start from here, so from the relationship between shareholders and the company. Actually, shareholders receive something, so receive cash, if the difference between the dividend that they receive and the capital that they have provided inside the company is positive. So this difference between the dividend and the capital is defined as net cash generation. So the value that the company is able to provide to shareholders can be considered as the difference between dividend and capital. But if you want to measure this net cash generation, this is not so simple because every company has a different dividend policy. So if you want to be more precise in calculating the net cash generation, we need to consider the same schema but looking at the complementary area, which is the project perspective. What do I mean? I mean that if we have a company, once the company receives the capital from the shareholders, the company used to invest this money into projects and into activities. What are investments? Investments can be defined as cash outflows because the company purchased, for example, equipment, land, property. So investments can be defined as assets that provide their value for the company for a time horizon that is higher than 1 year. And once the investment is provided for the company, this project will provide back the company some cash that we can define as cash flow again at a certain instant of time. This cash flow can be distinguished between cash in and cash out. We have the cash in the moment in which the company received the cash because it sold the product or delivered the service, while we have the cash out in the moment in which the company purchased raw material. And so again, we can define the cash that is generated from the project perspective by considering the difference between the cash flow at a certain moment of time and the investment again at a certain moment of time. This difference can be defined as net cash flow. So the net cash flow at a certain moment of time can be considered as this difference. As you can see, the two perspectives are complementary, which means that the net cash generation should be equal to the net cash flow. But as I said, given that it is very difficult to define the dividend policy of the company, the ability of the company to generate cash for the shareholders used to be measured by looking at this formula, which is the net cash flow. But we need to be even more precise because actually if you apply this formula, this is related to one specific year, because if we take 1 year, we make the difference between cash flow and investment and we can define the net cash that the company is able to deliver for the shareholders. But of course a company doesn't want to survive only for 1 year, but the company has the objective to live for an infinite life, which means that we need to adjust this formula taking into account the fact that the company aims to deliver products and services over the long run. So basically, this formula is adjusted and gives rise to another formula which is defined as net present value, defined as NPV. The NPV is measured at a certain moment of time, which is today, which is 0, and the net present value equals the sum from t, which is the time from 0 till infinite, because we are assuming an infinite life of our company, of the cash flow of a certain moment of time minus the investment again at an instant of time t. So if you see, this value equals the net cash flow. So what we are saying here is that the net present value, so the value that the company is able to deliver to the shareholders, is the sum from now till infinite of the net cash flow of future year. But we need to add the denominator, which is the so-called discounted formula, 1 plus k at the power of t. Let's try to understand what does this mean. Assuming that we have our time horizon, and this is the time t. So we have the year 0, then we have the year 1, then we have the year 2, and then we have the year 3. We have the net cash flow that the company is able to generate every year. So we have that at the moment of time 0, the company generates 500 euros. Then at the year 1, the company generates 1,000 euros. At the year 2, the company generates 1,000, for example, and 500 euros. And then we have that the company at the year 3 will generate 2,000 euros. The point is that we want to identify which is the net present value, so the value that the company is able to deliver to the shareholders. The logic is that we just need to sum the net cash flow that is delivered in the different year. But we cannot sum cash flows of different years because of the time effect. If we have 2,000 euros at the year 3, it does not correspond to the same amount of money today. So what we need to do is just to move back this amount of cash in the moment in which we are doing the evaluation, which is the instant zero. So we are just moving back these cash flows. And the idea is to say, okay, if we have 2,000 euros at the year 3, they correspond to how much money at the instant zero? So the process of moving back these cash flows at the instant zero for doing the evaluation is defined as discounting. So basically we are discounting cash flows. And in order to discount this cash flow, we just need this formula, 1 plus k at the power of t. This is exactly the formula that allows us to move back these cash flows. What is this k? This k represents the cost of the capital. The cost of the capital is composed by three main elements. These three main elements are the risk-free rate, which is the rate of government security. Then we have the inflation, and then we have the risk premium of the company, which corresponds to the level of risk of a company activity. The higher the level of risk of an activity of the company, the higher the value of the risk-free rate. The sum of these three different components, so the risk-free rate, the inflation, and the risk premium of the company, gives rise to this K. So basically, if we are applying this formula, what we are doing, we are like summing net cash flows that are generated in different years, and we are discounted back these cash flows in order to define the net present value, which is the value today that the company is able to deliver to the shareholders in the long run, which represents the objective of the company. So this is a very important formula, so keep in mind that this is our reference element. The objective of a profit company is to maximize this net present value. Now let's try to apply this formula and to see the application of the formula with an example. We have a cost of capital which is equal to the 8%. Then we have that the net cash flow at the year 1 is equal to 1,000 euros. Then we have that the net cash flow at the year 2 is equal to 7,000 euros. And then we have that the net cash flow at the year 3 equals to 13,000 euros. And we want to understand what is the net present value. So what's the value that the company is able to generate to shareholders? In order to answer this question, we need to apply this formula. So basically, we need to say, okay, what's the net present value? The net present value is the sum from 0 to infinite, but in this case is from 1 to 3 of the net cash flow discounted. So let's apply the formula. We have that the NPV equals 1,000 euros divided by 1 plus 0.08, which is our cost of the capital, and this is the year 1, plus 7,000 euros divided by 1 plus 0.08 at the power of 2, which is the year 2, plus 13,000 euros, which is the net cash flow of the year 3, divided by 1 plus 0.08 at the power of 3. So we are just applied this formula and we obtain that this net present value equals to 17,247 euros. That's really important because we are saying that the value that the company is able to generate to shareholders is not the sum of the net cash flow. So it is not equal to 21,000 euros, but it is 17,247, which is an example of the application of the NPV to calculate the net present value generated by the company.